Welcome to Thoughts Roundup. So glad to have you back with me today. Thank you for listening. I want to tell you today about an old preacher uncle, Edmund. Edmund left Louisiana to go to Columbia, Mississippi, to build a new church many years ago. And he got to that church and was successful in getting it established. When you go through Columbia, Mississippi, in the direction towards, I believe it's Brookhaven, look on your right side and you'll see that magnificent structure, that church. Well, that's the outgrowing of his beginning. Now, later, after he was no longer with the church, he was preaching across the country, and he was preaching a revival for Brother A.L. Lyles. And it was winter time, and they had a nice wood open fire there in the house. My uncle was sitting staring into the fire. And he said, "Brother Lyles, I see faces in the fire." "Well," he said, "Brother Dice, who do you see?" "Well," he said, "I see Brother Dexter Russian." "Why do you think you see him?" "Well," he said, "when we were building the church in Columbia, we were starving to death. We didn't have food, and we had been without food the biggest part of 3 days. We were down to eating nothing but turnip greens." And he said, "Brother Dexter Russian," he was a pastor not too terribly far from there, he drove up, and on the back of his pickup truck, he had all kind of fruit, vegetables, canned goods. He said, "Yeah, he kept us from being awfully hungry." And I can't help but see his face. Well, 40 years later, Brother Lyles had told me that story. And 40 years later, out on his farm, he called it, way back in the woods, I was staying, while my wife and I were staying with them, preaching for him. And we had a nice fire ablaze. It was a cold day. And I was sitting there in front of the fire, and I said, "Brother Lyles, I see faces in the fire." "Oh," he said, "you do? Who do you see?" I said, "I see Mrs. John E. Ficklin." "Oh?" I said, "Yeah. You see, when my wife and I went to Dallas, we had $360 or $80, and that's all we had. And we went there to build a new church. We had not been preaching very long. We didn't know how to build a new church. And when we got there, the first week, I believe it was, of course, we didn't have any place to have church. We didn't know people, and didn't really know just what to do. And one day I told my wife, I said, I'll be back after a while. She said, where are you going? I said, I'm going to go to a realtor's office. What are you going? Why are you going to a realtor's office? I said, well, I got to start somewhere. I didn't have any money. So I got in the office, and he said, yes, we have this and we have that, and he showed me some property. He said, now the price of this is this, and price. How much, Mr. Marler or Reverend Marler, are you able to put down? And I said, well, I don't have any money. He said, you don't have any money? I said, no. Well, he said, He said, wait just a moment. He said, there is a private school that has a gym right on Ferguson Road, one of the greatest addresses for this area. And he said, she has let several churches, and he began to list the churches that were built from there. And he said, my wife goes to a church that's been in, they're starting a church in that, from that little auditorium, that little gym, and said, they just got out of there last week. They pay $137 a month. And you know what? You might be able to rent that. So I went to see Miss Ficklin. Oh, she said, no. Oh, I don't want any more churches. She said, they're too much problem. I don't want any more churches. She said, we built, and she listed, I believe it was the Baptist and the Presbyterian and 2 or 3 other churches. Said they've all started from here, but I just don't want any more. I said, well, Miss Ficklin, I appreciate what you've done for all these people. I really do. It's commendable that you've helped all these churches get started. But I'm so sorry that you have stopped with us. She said, well, how many people do you have in your congregation? I said, 3. Myself, my wife, and my daughter. She studied a moment. She said, all right. She said, I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to let you have it as long as you need it. Rent free. I'm not going to charge you anything. Yes, it's very easy to see Miss Ficklin in my mind's eye. What a great lady. Now, today, there's one of the greatest churches in that area that's still going and still growing and still have improvements because of Miss John E. Ficklin. God bless you.